Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, salam. Welcome everybody to MACFEST 2025, to another exciting environmental panel. These webinars are being recorded in case you've missed it or you would like to show it to somebody else or watch it again. You can watch them for 30 days on Facebook, but also you can watch them on MACFEST YouTube. And all the links are on MACFEST website on the bottom to all the social media, but also include them in the newsletter. So do subscribe to MACFEST newsletter and you will always stay up to date. So today's panel, I've been waiting for this event since the moment I found we're gonna have one. And we're saying hello today from France, from the UK, also from Kenya, which is amazing. Do tell us where you are sitting in the world. We do want to know where our public is watching us from. We usually have people watching us from all over the world. And today's host is Professor Sherilyn Macgregor. She's the professor of environmental politics and the director of the Just Center at the University of Manchester. She's going to tell you more about that. So over to you, Sherilyn.
Thank you, and salam, and welcome to everyone. I hope everyone had a very good Eid, and I'm very pleased to be here this afternoon. I'm very pleased to be hosting this session. Where I'm sitting today is in the Lake District in the UK, which is in the northwest of the UK. And where I'm sitting today, the earth is looking awesomely beautiful on a sunny April afternoon. Which reminds us that even when we are aware of the deep crisis of biodiversity loss, mass extinction, pollution, and climate breakdown, we must be moved by its beauty to protect and repair it. And for many people, it is through faith and spirituality that this inspiration is expressed and acted upon. And of course, for 25% of the global population, it is Islam that provides this inspiration and guidance. And I've been a professor of environmental politics for about 30 years, and I've always been very interested in thinking about how religion, it has an important effect on people's connection to environment, to their desire to advocate on behalf of a more sustainable relationship between humans and their environment. I have been working for the last 7 years in Manchester to really do research that is more inclusive of diverse perspectives, diverse communities, and particularly global majority diaspora communities who live in Manchester. And through that research, we've been trying to advocate for a more open and inclusive approach to how we talk about environment and addressing the climate crisis in Manchester, and really to try to challenge often the invisibilization of Muslim communities in our political debates about environment. So I'm very much looking forward to hearing from our esteemed speaker today, to hear about the important principles and practices of Islam in the environmental stewardship movement around the world. So let me move now to introduce Dr. Iyad Abumoghli, and I have a great honor to introduce you, Dr. Iyad. Dr. Iyad is a distinguished luminary in the realm of environmental leadership and sustainable development. He serves as the director of the Faith for Earth Coalition within the United Nations Environment Program. And this is a coalition that unites diverse faith groups around issues of environment. Dr. Iyad has a distinguished career spanning 40 years and has accumulated a wealth of international experience, having served in leadership positions around the world with the United Nations. Dr. Iyad has a doctoral degree in engineering with a focus on environmental management, which reflects his firm commitment to environmental stewardship, and his management skills have been strengthened as an outstanding graduate of the UN Virtual Development Academy. Dr. Iyad has made significant, eloquent contributions to the scholarly arena as author of numerous papers and book chapters that contemplate the interplay of religion and environment, ethics, values, and spirituality, all in the context of environmental governance. So Dr. Iyad, we welcome you. We welcome you to speak for 20 or 30 minutes. We're very interested particularly to hear about your involvement in Al-Mizan, a covenant for the earth, which outlines an Islamic approach to environmental stewardship, and that was unveiled in February of last year at the United Nations Environment Assembly. It's a fascinating document, and we're very interested to hear about your experience with it. So welcome, Dr. Iyad. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Sherilyn. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Hello, everybody. I'm pleased. It's great to be with you this afternoon. And I mean, I'm delighted that you, Sherilyn, is working on such issues in environmental and climate justice, but also addressing the faith perspective. This is something that is highly close to my heart, and I have been trying to engage the faith community in environmental and policy governance for the past at least 8 years. And we do believe that there is a role for the faith community to present its perspectives on environmental justice, environmental governance, and how things should move forward apart or aside from the way the contemporary developmental paradigm is moving with. So today I have prepared a presentation. I think my colleagues will share the presentation, and I will take you through the journey of Al-Mizan, but also talk about some of the principles in Al-Mizan related to environmental governance and how they relate to the contemporary environmental challenges, which we call the triple planetary environmental crises. And this is indeed, as you mentioned, Sherilyn was launched last February in Kenya during the United Nations Environment Assembly, which is the highest authority at the international level, leading environmental policy and governance work. And of course, policies and its implementation at the national level. It is represented by 193 countries as members of the governing body of the Assembly. So it was a very fortunate moment and high-profile moment, actually, to launch Al-Mizan during that event. Next is a description of what is Al-Mizan. Al-Mizan document itself is a manifesto, if you wish, an outlook, a strategic outreach or outlook for engaging in environmental governance from an Islamic perspective. It was developed by scholars and scientists and environmentalists over the past 4 years. They took 4 years to produce this magnificent document. And of course, it tackles as I mentioned, we wanted it to tackle the contemporary issues that are being discussed at the global level, whether we talk about fossil fuel or ecocide or, the triple planetary crisis. So it is a spot on all of these issues that are being debated at the moment. And of course, it is taken from Islamic principles, but it does not only speak to Muslims, it speaks to the international community because it provides a legal and value-based paradigm shift for environmental governance. Next slide is why we chose Al-Mizan as a title. It was not easy. It was, after discussion with the scholars and, you will see in the presentation that we might have chosen any other Islamic principle to represent the document. But Al-Mizan, everybody is talking about the balance or sustainability, or the balanced sustainability pillars of sustainable development. And so the balance, which is Al-Mizan in Arabic, which means balance in English, represents all of that. And it was articulated very well in the Holy Quran in chapter called Al-Rahman, or the most compassionate, where God, after highlighting his signs on earth, the ayats of creation, like, creating the sun and the moon and the trees and the mountains, he then says, we created the balance, we set up the balance so that you may not exceed the balance and weigh with justice and do not fall short in the balance. So this is how God wanted us to deal with his creation. So this is an articulate order or divine order to keep the balance when we deal with natural resources. Next, it talks about, what have we based Al-Mizan on? So instead of, the previously or the previous active engagements of scholars, they gave their own interpretation and their own description. However, we wanted this document to be based on the Quran itself. So everything we talk about must be justified and evidenced in the Quran, or in the practices and sayings of Prophet Muhammad, the Hadith, or the practices over the past 1400 years, so as established by the Islamic civilizations. So these were the basics or the basic elements where Al-Mizan was derived from. Next slide is, all previous contributions or great contributions, in fact, by Muslim scholars were done as a research or, an article or a book written by somebody. However, in Islamic jurisprudence, when you want to pass something to the Islamic nation or community, you have to verify anything that you submit. In Al-Quran or in Islam, that is called tabayyun, which has to be justified. So this is what we did after the scholars have established the chapters, the content, and so on. We have launched a shura system, or a practice, or a consultation with more than 350 Islamic organizations across the globe, from the West and the East, North and the South. After we have drafted the final draft, we shared it with Al-Azhar. Al-Azhar is the highest Islamic institution and the oldest one. And then with the Muslim Council of Elders, which includes high-level representatives of all sects of Islam. And this is exactly what we did when we developed Al-Mizan, that we brought Sunni people, we brought Shia people, we brought Ismailis, we brought Ibrahimis. So all sects of Islam, for this document to be all-inclusive and comprehensive. So we verified the document with these Islamic institutions to make it, verifiable and adopted at the highest level. It was initially discussed with the Islamic ministers of the environment when they adopted a strategy for religion and the environment, which UNEP has contributed highly to its development. So it was a sort of a response to implement and operationalize this strategy from an Islamic principles. And currently it is available in 11 languages. Of course, the first language is the Arabic language, the language of the Quran, because we cannot come up with something that does not speak the same language of the Quran. So the Arabic language, and then it was translated into 10 other languages. Next slide talks about the theological foundation. What is the theology behind the content of Al-Quran? First of all, we established the signs of God, ayatullah, the signs that God created, setting up the mountains, the seas, the stars, the moon, how they, the cosmology type of things, but also the relationship between humans and animals or the natural environment. And all of this was, is underlying the divine wisdom in the creation itself. And the principle of the relationship between humans and nature or all other communities is the stewardship responsibility. And stewardship in the past used to be thought as, you're the governor of this earth. But now the concept is different. The interpretation now is more realistic in terms of it's a responsibility to manage sustainably the resources that God has provided. The next slide talks about how nature is a sacred duty given to humans, as part of the stewardship responsibility. And it uses the moral, legal, and spiritual obligations of humans towards nature. And whenever, Muslims, the five pillars of Islam, we are asked to practice prayers and contemplation and fasting and so on. These rituals should also reflect our responsibility towards worshiping God, the creator of this creation, and to contemplate, meditate, be mindful of our responsibility towards nature. So Al-Mizan document, it's a strategic document, or now it is a movement to revive the Islamic ecological ethics for global sustainability. Next slide talks about the different chapters included in Al-Mizan document itself. So as I mentioned, we wanted to first of all, tell the world what are the issues that we are dealing with, what are the environmental crises that we are describing, and then how the signs of God on earth are relating to the human nature relationship. And then we talk about, how can we, or Muslims or the international community, do its utmost best to conserve and sustainably live with these resources. The fourth chapter talks about, the sharing, the responsibility, the justice, the fairness in our relationship with the with nature, and specifically the political and economic components of our engagement. And finally, it's a plan of action is presented for the international community to adopt, to apply these principles into environmental governance. The following slide, of course, Al-Mizan contains more than 50 Islamic principles and how specifically they are related to environmental sustainability or our responsibility as stewards on this earth. So, of course, I will not go over all of these 50, but I've just highlighted on this slide some of these important principles. For example, every single day Muslims say Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. The Rahmah, the compassion, is an attribute of God, but also it's a way Muslims should act. So when you are compassionate, compassion is not only with fellow humans, but it is with nature. So you have to be Rahim, compassionate to environmental resources. Of course, Islam has legal principles that I will talk about later on, but Sharia is the Islamic rule of law, which should govern our practices and our interactions with nature. Another one is Tawheed, which is the oneness of God, and God has created all things as a one creation, and all of this creation glorifies God. So, I mean, the skies, the stars, the animals, the humans, they all glorify God. So it is our responsibility to preserve that oneness in the creation. It talks about adl, justice, of course, justice between people, but also justice to nature and justice through nature to people. For example, if you have water resources that you are controlling, you have to apply justice in access to water, not preventing anybody, because Islam says all people are partners in free water, soil, and energy. So water is one of the elements that we are all partners in. So we have to preserve that and provide its resources in a just manner. It talks even about, these principles tackle even systems like the HIMA system, which is the protected area system that I will touch upon later on. Next slide goes to some examples of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Prophet Muhammad is also known as the Green Prophet, or the most environmentalist that God has ever created. With his teachings, with his practices, he was a model for the humanity. For example, Prophet Muhammad established water conservation practices. And every day we do ablution for 5 times a day. But Prophet Muhammad asked us to conserve water if we were to do ablution even on a running river. So what would a Muslim, cleaning reduce from that running river? But Prophet Muhammad was so visionary that he asked Muslims to conserve water. He asked us to prohibit extravagance in anything dealing with natural resources. Israf, no israf. God likes not wasters, and Allah la yuhibbul musrifin. So even if you have abundance of anything, Islam asks you to be in the middle, or al-wasat, which is the middle way, and just taking exactly what you need, not what you want. So if you need 1 liter of water for your day, use that 1 liter of water. Do not waste that amount. Established, as I mentioned, the protected zones, the first protected zones in history, or known to history, or recorded in historic books, which are the protected areas of Mecca and Medina, where Muhammad, peace be upon him, drew a radius and prevented hunting except in certain seasons, hunting except in some limited amounts that is needed for your day, that day only needs. Of course, the protection of trees, prevented killing of infant or small animals that are breastfeeding, and so on. So it was a comprehensive system, and there are books written about the Hima system. And of course, encouraged planting trees. And amazingly, Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said, even if the doomsday, the judgment day comes, and you have a sapling in your hand, you have to plant it for reasons you do not understand, which is, a testimony of the importance of planting trees in Islam. Next slide. And I talked about the legal instruments. One of them, or one principle that is highly important in Islam, is la darara wa la dirar, which is avoiding harm. So even if you're, utilizing resources, natural resources, and you're doing your economic activity or your social activity, you should be mindful of what the consequences of these activities are. So if you are establishing an industry for the benefit of the society, you have to avoid harm of that industry on people and on the environment. Another legal principle is maslaha. Everything in Islam, especially investments, financial transactions, should be for the public interest and not for the private individual interest. Although Islam does not prevent accumulating wealth for individuals. If you're good, if you're clever, if you're a good investor, you can. However, all the things that you do should lead to public interest. Another legal system, which is the hisba, the accountability for environmental harm, or hisba in general. It is an accountability system for trading, transactions, dealings, contractual agreements between people, and so on. And the last, of course, but the overarching one, is the Sharia, which is the Islamic jurisprudence or rule of law. The following slide talks about specifically Islamic finance. And Al-Mizan document has touched upon them, but we scratch the surface of Islamic finance, because Islamic finance is so deep. It touches upon all economic transactions and investments and so on out there. So some of the Islamic principles that are included in Al-Mizan, for example, the prohibition of interest, which is riba. You cannot lend money to someone and ask for an interest over that. However, giving money for somebody that needs money is not prohibited. On the contrary, it is encouraged, but in partnership. So if I give somebody, I don't know, $100, okay, I do not ask for 110. This is riba. What I say, we invest together this 100, You put your efforts, I put my money, and whatever you generate, okay, we divide that. So this is musharaka. This is a principle in Islam. There's another one which is mudaraba, which is, the mudaraba is when you offer your expertise and somebody else puts their money. Musharaka, when you both put certain amounts of money and you divide the profits according to your investments. So all of that is included in Islamic finance. Of course, zakat, which we all know, the charity, the 2.5% of our wealth on an annual basis, given to the needy people. But currently, the Islamic understanding is that how do you give to the needy people? Is it cash? Is it money? Or is it food? Or it's other things? Now, Muslims have agreed that it could be anything that leads to a sustainable livelihood of the people. So if you put your money in investment to generate jobs for the people, this is zakat and acceptable. If you put money in protecting water resources management, because the water will prevent diseases, will provide water to the Muslim community, then it is zakat. So these principles are developing and have been developed over the past decades. Now, one other principle in Islamic finance is the trust or ethical conduct, which is called the amana or ihsan. And that is all transactions, whether for people or for nature, should be trustworthy and should be fair and apply all of the principles of cooperation in a just manner. The next slide describes how Al-Mizan is a call to action. As I mentioned, the last chapter is about, what can the international community do in applying these ethical principles in education and sermons and even interfaith collaboration, because that what is also Al-Mizan is talking about. We are one global community. Muslims cannot say, well, we are Muslims, we apply our principles. No, it has to be in collaboration. وَقَدْ خَلَقْنَاكُمْ شُعُوبًا وَقَبَائِلَ. We created you peoples and tribes so you can know one another and cooperate with one another. And of course, it talks about how faith-based climate advocacy can work from Islamic principles. The next slide, I believe it's and all of the following slides, and I hope that we can go over them quickly. They are the actions proposed in the Al-Mizan document as an action-oriented global commitment for the next 10 years. So the first one is the establishment, next slide, is the establishment of Al-Mizan Academy. As I mentioned, Al-Mizan is an outlook document. It derives from the principles of Al-Quran and Al-Hadith. But in each of those 50 principles, you can run a whole set of research and articles and studies and implementation mechanisms and so on. So we are working on establishing Al-Mizan Academy. Our colleagues actually in the UK are working on that. We have developed the curricula, the staff structuring and so on. And hopefully we will establish it soon once the financial resources are available. The next action is establishing the civil society movement. Unfortunately, in the Islamic countries, the voluntarism as a general concept is not as big as it is in the West. So in the West, you would find, hundreds of non-governmental organizations working for, the environment, for charity and so on. In Islam, charity is taken as, my responsibility is to pay my zakat at the end of the year. And that's it. I give the money and so on. But there's no, the culture of voluntarism is not there. So we want to establish that not only, for Islamic principles only, but of course, for serving the society. The next action is related to the initiatives and campaigns that we will be launching, with cities, universities, schools, educational institutions, civil society, and so on. So we want this campaign to be a global, comprehensive one with the engagement of the whole of society, everyone, all institutions, establish Al-Mizan cities that, uphold the principles of Al-Mizan in their management of the city, in their practices, in their greening, and so on. The following slide is about an action related to the role of young people. So we're establishing a youth council. We do have a Faith for Earth Youth Council that is an interfaith youth council, but we want one specifically to move with Al-Mizan as a guiding document or strategic action agenda for Muslim young men and women to engage them in beneficial service to the society. The following action is related to the establishment of an award system. How to encourage people is just by awarding them either a title or a nominal award or whatever. So we hope to establish a global award for achievements from an Islamic perspective on environmental action, or it doesn't have to be a Muslim, but anybody who's applying, Islamic principles from the global community towards, adopting Al-Mizan principles. The following in the next slide is a trust fund, because all of this is tremendous and huge and requires resources and so on. So we hope to establish a trust fund that can utilize the zakat money as well. So to go to beneficial, targeted, positive achievements towards the environment and its people, because when we talk about the environment, we talk about people and the planet. It's not only protecting trees and animals, but protecting our existence within all other communities, because humans are one community of all other communities, as mentioned in the Quran. The Quran says you are one community of other communities that God has created. The next slide is an action towards establishing a network. We are in a digital era. Everything is shared in a click or a fraction of a second. So we want to establish that networking between Muslims to share practices, share good examples, share ideas, creativity, and engage the global community in this movement. Next one is creating an international day for action on Al-Mizan. So every day, the global community, especially the Islamic community, comes together and implement actions like the Earth Day that is on the 22nd of April, or the World Environment Day on the 5th of June, or each country has its Environment Day. So establish an Environment Day, International Day for Al-Mizan, dedicated to awareness and action. And next slide. As I mentioned, there are different sects of Islam. However, they all follow the same Holy Quran and the same practices of Prophet Muhammad. So it warrants that we establish a global conference biannual basis whenever it is needed to discuss, not only what can be done, but strategic approaches by nations. ISISCO, for example, invites every other year Islamic ministers of the environment to discuss a certain topic. So that can be one of the issues that we establish with them in holding such conferences. Next slide. Mosques or houses of worship are the go-to places for Muslims to learn about Islam, to practice Islam. So they better be models of Islamic sustainability. And there have been so many initiatives that we have been glad to be part with or support, like the blue and green mosques in Jordan. More than 5,000 mosques now use only solar energy. So almost in Jordan. In Morocco, the same. Also in other countries, there have been retrofitting the water-saving devices in each of the masjids or mosques to reduce water waste. But also there are mosques, and I'm sure you know the mosque in, I think, Cambridge, which is a sustainable mosque built from recycled material on, sustainability measures. Next, this is a call that God created this earth, this land, this common home in a beautiful manner. And as said by Prophet Muhammad, the word is beautiful and verdant, and verily God has made you his stewards in it. So we have the responsibility to be good stewards. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Iyad. That was a very fascinating talk and a very thorough sort of overview of the contents of Al-Mizan, and I hope people have found it as interesting as I have. There's been many positive comments in the chat so far, and many words of thanks for your presentation. We're going to move to some questions from the audience. There's a question and answer function in the Zoom call, and if there are people who would like to put some questions in there, I will read them out in a moment. But maybe if we could start with perhaps, I mean, you talk about a call to action in Al-Mizan, and it's been not quite a year since it was adopted. Can you share some of the sort of current applications or achievements of Al-Mizan, things that stand out as being a particular success in the first year of its life?
Definitely, and thank you for this question, Sherilyn. First of all, let me say that all Al-Mizan activities have been voluntary, contributed by, even the 12 or 13 scholars that have written Al-Mizan. They've spent 4 years free of charge working on this. Another achievement is translating Al-Mizan into 11 languages. Again, all contributed by Muslim scholars and institutions. What we have done as well with Jordan, or in Jordan, with Prince Hassan, who is a lead interfaith figure at the global level, we launched Al-Mizan Jordanian chapter. So there is a committee now, a Jordanian National Committee, Al-Mizan Committee, studying the principles of Al-Mizan and trying to adopt them into all sectors of the economy, whether it is tourism, from Islamic principle education, how to include Islamic principles, water resources management, and so on. So in Jordan, we have established a national committee. Also in Jordan, they established the first Al-Mizan Park, which is a national reserve applying the HIMA principles. And it's used by universities for educational purposes, but also with scientists for research and so on. Al-Mizan was launched in a number of global fora. In the UK, it was presented to the Parliament by our brothers and sisters in the UK. We launched it in Qatar, and we established a small Al-Mizan forest in Qatar, so applying the Islamic principles for planting trees. And just last week, we held Al-Mizan symposium or high-level symposium in Zanzibar. You know, Zanzibar is a group of islands, and a lot of tourism investment is going on there. So we wanted to prevent just, laying out, resorts without any care for nature. So we are applying Al-Mizan principles for Islamic value-based tourism system in Zanzibar, which is been adopted by the highest level in Zanzibar, from the ministers and the head of the government and so on. The Oxford Center for Islamic Studies have launched 3 global research conferences on Al-Mizan and what is the need to make Al-Mizan, practical and detailed in the research on the different aspects. And so there are many of these activities within only the first year, and we hope to establish and do better and more when resources are available. All of that was done free of charge by voluntary contributions.
Wow, that's incredible. I've got one question I can read from an audience member. In what ways have modern sustainability frameworks overlooked or diluted the deeper ethical dimensions of Al-Mizan, particularly its insistence on justice, balance, and accountability to future generations? And how might a more faithful application of these principles disrupt dominant narratives in environmental and community practice? And that's very interesting to talk about, the challenge to some of the dominant narratives that I'm sure many people are aware, about growth or about the types of approaches that perhaps the dominant class within the environmental sector tend to favor. What's your view on that?
Well, we need to differentiate between the sustainability frameworks adopted by the global community. Probably the easiest example is Agenda 2030 and the Sustainable Development Goals, but also national interests when implementing the Sustainable Development Goals and the Agenda 2030. And the first thing that I would say is Agenda 2030 or the SDGs is a negotiated framework, right? So all countries have come and accepted that we want, 100%, no, let's do it 50, no. So we agree on 70% protection, for example. So it's a negotiated. The moral principles are not negotiated. They are established. This is moral responsibility. This is the ethics. This is the value we uphold, and so on. So this is a difference. That's, the moral has, you cannot negotiate, right? The second one is as I mentioned, the national interests and understanding of the global framework for sustainability. For example, when we talk about the common but differentiated responsibilities, this is a very common principle in sustainable development. So all of us are in this together. This is what it means. But for developing nations, it means that there is a responsibility for earlier polluters, those who over the past 200, 300 years exploited all natural resources. So there is a responsibility. We, as developing countries, we contribute now by adopting the new technologies to avoid going where you started and what you implemented. But for the developed countries, it means no, they're saying we are all in this together. You have a responsibility, we have a, so we're equal in this. So this is where it differs. It's in the interpretation and the understanding. As I mentioned, ethics, values, this is why religions are very important for or to be adopted not only for environmental issues, but in our daily lives, social interaction, economic development, and so on. Because those are principles that have been practiced over centuries, right? And they have been adopted and ingrained in our DNA. So it's easier for us to meet eye to eye when we talk about a value. And exactly this is, when you listen to an imam or a priest or a rabbi, you say amen, right? Because this person is, talking from God's, principles and words and so on. But if a politician or a scientist comes and argues, you argue. Because, ask, what theory is this? How did you get your research? What are, the indicators and so on? So that is debatable. So we need to go back to our ethics and values and moral responsibility and make them integrated into the sustainability framework that we're talking about.
Yes. I mean, some would draw a parallel between Al-Mizan and perhaps Laudato Si, the Catholic Church, the Pope's sort of declaration on environmental sustainability, the duties of Catholics towards environmental sustainability. And of course, I think when the Pope pronounces things, that gets in the media, very high profile, and many Catholics around the world want to follow. How would you compare the two, or would you want to compare the two?
Well, definitely. I mean, this is a good question. First of all, let me mention that Al-Mizan, when we launched it, we had a representative from the Pope representing the Catholic Church, launching Al-Mizan with us. And in his words, he said, Al-Mizan is the sibling of Laudato Si. It completes the story. Now, completes it for at least 50% of the global population, because Muslims and Christians together, they make more than 50% of the global population. So you have Christians with Laudato Si, you have Muslims with Al-Mizan, all right? So you're talking to 50% of the global population with something that they believe in, principles that they practice on a daily basis, but not on their relationship with nature. Yes, as Christians and Muslims, we have these principles. And of course, we are working with other religions like the Buddhism and Hinduism to come up with a similar document. But Al-Mizan and Laudato Si also starts with describing the nature of things at the global level, what's happening, the financial crisis and, the biodiversity and so on. And then it talks about, the obligations of Christians in terms of applying the Christian principles. And Laudato Deum, the second version of Laudato Si, talks about climate change specifically, but also depends a lot on science and what the IPCC report says. There are a few things that Al-Mizan have tried to avoid when Laudato Si was launched. Al-Mizan is not the work or the words of one person like Pope Francis. It is a collective work of hundreds and hundreds of organizations working together to come up with such a document. Also, Al-Mizan because it came, I think, 8 or 9 years after Laudato Si. It incorporated modern climate, environmental issues that are being discussed. For example, loss and damage, fossil fuel proliferation treaty, ecocide. So it tackles all these new principles. So, but together, both documents are, wonderful framework for ethical approaches and moral responsibility towards sustainability between people and the planet.
Yes, I'm sure we could go for another hour discussing this, because I now have many more questions, but I think we need to wrap up. There aren't any other questions in the Q&A box. I mean, just by way of closing, we didn't ask you at the beginning, where are you in the world? I mean, I know you're in Nairobi. Maybe could you just, by way of closing, tell us a little bit about your local context, the kinds of issues that you observe in your local context, what kinds of environmental problems, but also actions that people are taking that you are inspired by?
Well, thank you. As you said, I am in Nairobi in Kenya. Kenya, or Nairobi, is called the environmental capital of the world because it houses UNEP, the United Nations Environment Program, which is the highest environmental authority on environmental governance, and the organization that keeps the environment under review and discusses trending or expected environmental crises that might happen in the future. So we keep the environment watched. In Kenya, I, for example, have lived here for a few years now, 7 or 8 years, and I have witnessed climate change day in, day out. And the impacts have been devastating. In some years, it was pouring rain 4 or 5 times above the average and destroying lands, killing people, sweeping infrastructure, devastating livelihoods, and so on. And on other years, it's completely dry, even killing people and killing animals and impacting industry which depends on vegetation and so on. So the country, as well as other countries in Africa, are facing tremendous environmental challenges. And of course, you can talk about the spillover effects of climate change. For example, people are leaving their lands. They're going to either cities or even leaving their countries, to Europe or to other countries to seek better livelihood opportunities. So it's also impacting the socio-economic well-being of the people. Conflicts, of course, whether the impact of conflicts on the environment or the impact of the environment on the conflicts, because climate change is actually causing conflicts between nations, especially transboundary nations, when they share water resources or land resources or what have you. But also when you have destruction through conflicts and arms, that will impact the land and degradation and so on. So these are some of the major issues. The Western world needs to look differently to Africa. Africa has been the treasure for the development of the Western nations, the exploitation of all natural resources in Africa went to the development of the Western nations. Now, I think it's time for Africa to utilize all the technological advancement, all the financial support that they could get to pay back at least for all the wealth that was taken away from Africa. Otherwise, the continent will face major socioeconomic and environmental problems moving into the future.
Yes, ecological debt and
Yes.
climate debt are important
Indeed.
concepts in this debate. Thank you very much, Dr. Iyad. This has been a wonderful, well, it's not ended on such a positive, I mean, it's a call to action for all of us to learn about these issues and to understand more about what Al-Mizan has to teach us. I'll turn over to MACFEST.
Sherilyn, thank you so much for wonderful hosting today. And thank you to Dr. Iyad for this insightful presentation. I love these kinds of events that are actually shedding more light on Islam, because there is just, everybody has access to the internet these days, but there's so much disinformation and misinformation. We don't know anymore how to verify what's true and what isn't. And events like this actually takes us into the truth, basically. You know, scholars who can tell us more and you know, to their best abilities of what the Quran is really about, and also take it like today a little bit further to show the examples, what happens when you put it into practice. This is amazing. We've got one researcher on in the audience today, who's just shared that he is let me just share with you what he's doing. Yeah, he's writing currently a paper on the crossover of Native American and Islamic values through the sources of Quran and Hadith, and he was very interested in this particular topic of environmental protection in the lands of Islam. So yeah, thank you so much for contributing to the community, basically, to spreading the knowledge and the true knowledge, basically. That's what I'm personally very grateful about. And just before you go away, I would like to just remind you, for those of you who can, who are in the position to travel, we've got a silk painting workshop with Aisha Yilmaz in Stockport on Tuesday at 2 o'clock. And we've got also two very creative panels coming up. One is on Saturday, 19th of April at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and that's the calligraphy and creativity workshop. Whereas later that afternoon at 4:30, it's all UK time, by the way, we've got creative recycling with Ala Zalat. And don't go away. I just wanted to say that we've got this Arts Awards process open now. You can submit your artworks. I mean, it's open to all Muslim artists based in the UK, all over UK. Last year, it was the first year of those awards, and they were Northwest Awards, but this time it's national. So wherever you are based in the UK, please do look up on MACFEST website under the Arts Awards tab. There is a submission process there, all the dates, and the submission process is free. Okay, so if you are an artist or you know anybody who is creative, who would like to show their photographs or calligraphy, drawings or paintings, please submit. We would like to see your works. So that's thank you from me. Does anybody else want to say anything before we finish today?
I just want to thank Dr. Iyad for an amazing session. I learned so much. And of course, thank you to Sherilyn for wonderful hosting. And thank you to our audience, of course, from wherever they are. It's a hot day here. I know many people are outside there, and they will watch the recording later or on Facebook. So they're double the numbers in real life. Okay. Okay. Assalamu alaikum rahmatullah barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Bye.